everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Boss Fight Breakdowns. Today we are moving along in finalizing the final boss fights that take place in the game in the last home stretch against the members of the Black Order. So if you've enjoyed this series, please feel free to leave a like on this episode if you found it as helpful as the previous installments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as the subscription is free and easy, and there is content coming on a daily basis. So let's have a look at the two boss fights in today's video, starting with the matchup against Supergiant. Now, Supergiant is, in my opinion, one of the more annoying boss fights, not necessarily one of the more difficult. And that is due to the fact that she is a telepath as well as has the Mind Stone at her possession during the course of this fight. Now, the interesting interaction here is that this takes place in the collector's store, or collection room, on Nowhere. So she does periodically pull in a couple of different opponents that are members of that collection. But the other things that make this fight difficult in particular is Supergiant. She rolls around your attacks, regens some of her stagger bar, and also she teleports away. And there's not a real good way to get a read on whether or not she's about to roll or teleport. So you can frequently throw out attacks that just don't end up landing because of her zipping away and moving to a different part of the arena or the stage. Now, she has a couple of different attacks that she throws out. She has some homing orbs of the yellow variety from the Mind Stone. She also has some black or shadow type orbs that will go out in kind of a fan area. She will occasionally summon in different grunts of different types, and they vary depending on the stage of the fight that you're in, such as this most recent summoning of some grunts, which are the alpha primitives from the Inhuman Society. But she also has a couple of those swirling spires that she can send out that kind of track onto your position, as well as a tornado type attack. Now, the difficult thing with the fight against Supergiant is if you take too much damage from certain parts of her attacks, she will actually invert your controls. And you can kind of sort of counterbalance that based off the particle effects above your character's head, but it's still not something that's really fun to have to deal with. Now, something kind of nice that helps with this boss fight is one of the grunt types that she summons in are some of the mighty mindless ones that are infused with the magical crystals that we're familiar with from the Dormammu fight. So defeating these enemies will prompt them to drop different crystals that you can then amp up on Supergiant's different attacks and then throw back at her to further stagger out her attacks. Though you do want to keep in mind that it is an attack that you have to space correctly, or you will end up missing the trajectory of that attack. Now, the members of the Black Order as a collective have a higher amount of health than most of the other opponents that you will face off against, but there are tools that can be used to your advantage. So at this point, I'm looking to hopefully get the last of her health down so we can get her into her second phase, and I'm trying to amp up the crystal for the attack damage that can be placed from that, and failing miserably, as it's really difficult to get a home on where she's going to end up when she teleports away. The best strategy that I eventually settled on is you will want to keep an eye on when she's in the middle of an attack animation and try and line your attacks up with that. Now, when she summons in these alpha primitives that are glowing, they will rush in on you and subsequently explode, and that's not exactly something fun that you want to have to deal with. So I do advise against engaging with them directly unless absolutely necessary. But abilities and synergy attacks should be able to take that out with relative ease, or just use an attack where you can comfortably stay at a distance. Now, some of the other attacks that we haven't really mentioned yet from Supergiant is she does summon a couple of different fields that are a black shadow on the floor or on the ground. And what those fields will do is they will slow you And as you can see here with the orbs that are revolving around inside those fields, not only will you be slowed, but if you are knocked by that yellow orb in the middle, you will have that inverted controls animation play above your head as well. Now, something that plays to your favor is these orbs that are laid out by the mindless ones can be used to absorb the yellow orbs in the center of those fields, after which it will slowly disappear. Now, a new attack that she gains in this second phase, which you just saw, is she will beckon down a couple of different storage containers from the storage room that we're fighting in. And she will do that in one of two different sequences, typically one after the other, where she will summon them into the center of the arena and then send them sliding outwards across in kind of a hexagonal pattern. Or she will also have an attack where they come in from the bottom and rush across the top of the, or towards the top of the arena. So you want to stay away from those where possible, as they are not attacks that you want to engage with directly. Now, as you've seen there, I did go ahead and make use of the crystal that we have to absorb the area of attack that she had beckoned in using the power of the Mind Stone. And that's a strategy that you'll want to rinse and repeat. You can really avoid a good majority of the attacks that she throws out by using and charging these crystals. But again, it can be fairly difficult to get a good read on when you're supposed to unleash that attack, as Supergiant will throw out an attack and then teleport away. So if you can find an attack or a mid-attack animation, then it's going to be a lot easier and a lot nicer for you to follow up with an attack that will actually be beneficial to you. All things considered, though, Supergiant does not hit incredibly hard. You can just get a lot of attack damage taken one after the other due to the nature of her attacks staggering you out or causing you to have the inverted controls. Now, towards the end, she did start summoning in some sentinels, and this is another wonderful opportunity that you have to finish out some of Supergiant's health, because the cores dropped by the sentinels are very useful and very powerful in terms of staggering opponents. And you saw there that I was able to land a hit with that sentry core on Supergiant, as well as the other sentry that is remaining. With those extreme attacks, I would have liked to have gotten a little more attack damage in, but with a couple more uses of our attacks here, we've got the fight finished out. So it can be long and drawn out if you don't have a good read on the fight, but you can get through it. Now, the second fight is against Cull Obsidian, and converse to the other one, this one is not incredibly difficult in terms of the attacks that he throws out, as they are fairly predictable, and you can either avoid them or roll around them to reduce the amount of damage that you may receive. But rather, he deals massive amounts of damage with all of his attacks, mainly due to the fact that he has access to the Power Stone. And an already powerful character with amped up amounts of strength and energy is really not something that you want to have to deal with in any circumstances, much less in a boss fight. That being said, again, Cull Obsidian's attacks are fairly predictable, and he has the unique characteristic of his attacks beckoning down these explosive canisters from the ceiling, so you can use those to your advantage in the fight to help burn him down and get through this fight a lot quicker. Now, a lot of his attacks do focus on leaping up into the air and crashing back down around you. And in the first phase, they are pretty simple to view and easy to work your way around. But in the second phase, he does gain access to a couple of attacks that make this a little more difficult, as you see that he is amping up the power of his attacks. Now, one of the attacks that he does is he sends out an arcing 3-wave attack twice, where there are different rays that emanate out from his axe, and then that third attack he slams into the ground and deals a massive amount of damage. Now, the attacks that he has access to in this second phase do have some similarities to what we see with the first area, but some additions is the additive of this attack where he will kind of jump around into the ground, and you can see the area that he's going to affect with that attack because it is clearly outlined underneath the area where he will be landing. And then you can work your way around and kind of roll away if you do happen to be in the zone where he's going to crash down on. That last attack where he crashes down with the reticle on the ground does summon the different orbs from the ceiling. So again, his biggest strength in his fight does turn into a bit of his own downfall as you continue to fight him. And he does home in on certain characters particularly, but you never want to let down your guard when avoiding these attacks from Cull Obsidian, because he can change his mind based off of proximity and does like to target the character that you are controlling. Now, one of the attacks that he's just showcasing here is his kind of, I call it the spinning top attack, where he will dizzy himself out as he swings his axe around in a top-like fashion around the arena. And that is an attack that leaves him vulnerable but deals massive amounts of damage if you do happen to get caught up in it at the wrong time. So all things considered, the rule of thumb with the Cull Obsidian fight is you want to avoid getting hit wherever possible. And that can be easier said than done, but as long as you can get a feel for the different attacks that he throws out and learn to react and have a decent understanding of how the roll mechanic works, then you're not really going to have a whole lot of trouble. One final thing that I do kind of want to mention with this fight is these explosive canisters that he beckons down from the ceiling. Though they are beneficial in terms of staggering him out, they don't deal as much damage to him directly as some of the other canisters that we've seen with these properties throughout the rest of the game. So it is something that you want to keep in mind as you are taking him on. And we've just about got him finished out here, so we'll go ahead and get the rest of him staggered out and then employ the last couple of our ability and synergy attacks. It looks like we're going to need to stagger him out one more time in this particular run. But again, as long as you are able to roll around and away from the attacks that he throws out, you're not going to have a terribly difficult time with this fight. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, again, feel free to leave it a like if you found it enjoyable or helpful. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And we will be back on Monday with another episode of Boss Fight Breakdowns. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day.